Hello, and welcome back to the Green Room podcast. I'm your host, Garon Green, and also as an integrative psychotherapeutic counsellor and through my counselling work at Garon Green Therapies, I spend a lot of time sitting with people in real difficult moments of their lives. They aren't always easy to talk about. We're talking depression, anxiety, grief, trauma, addictions, relationships and loss, and sometimes simply trying to understand ourselves. And this is why I started up the Green Room podcast. No pretending that life's perfect, not giving people simplistic answers, but creating a space where we can slow down, listen and reflect, and perhaps understand ourselves a little differently. Because sometimes the most important conversations isn't with what's wrong with me, it's what happened to me. And perhaps even more importantly, who I am underneath everything I've been through. And today I'm joined by someone whose story asks some incredible important questions about exactly that. And her name is Randi-Lee Bowslaugh. And today, as episode, as I called it, as still standing, and you'll soon know why, because sometimes resilience isn't about being the strongest person in the room. Sometimes resilience isn't about pushing harder. Sometimes resilience is simply still being here. And Randi-Lee is an author, a public speaker, mental health advocate and storyteller. She's spoken openly about her depression at such a young age, suicide thoughts and trauma, neurodiversity, chronic illness and even cancer. She's also worked with social services supporting marginalised communities and has used her lived experience to create conversations that allow other people to feel less alone. She is also a Canadian national champion in kickboxing. She represented Team Canada. She won silver at the 2016 Pan American Games. She's worked also as a coach and a yoga instructor, and she's also created an amazing show which she does on YouTube, is Right or Die Show, and conducted hundreds of conversations around mental health, neurodiversity, trauma, addiction, grief, chronic illness, as well as resilience. And on paper, that's such an extraordinary list of achievements. But today, I don't really want to talk about the list. I want to talk about the human being who's truly underneath all of that, because achievements don't tell us everything. The person who looks incredibly strong on the outside has spent years learning how to survive on the inside. And that's something I really do see within my therapy work. People often come into the room carrying stories nobody else knows. They may look successful, they may have families, careers, relationships, and smiling, and they may even function, yet internally they may be struggling enormously. So today I want to explore the person behind the achievements, the young child who experienced depression, the person who later discovered more about neurodiversity and trauma, the athlete whose body forced her to stop, the cancer survivor, the person living with chronic pain, the advocate, the storyteller, and ultimately Randi-Lee. So Randi-Lee, thank you so much. And I was even out of breath giving your introduction there, because you've been on such an amazing journey. And thank you so much for joining me on the Green Room podcast. It really is a true honor.
Well, thank you so much for having me. You make me sound so good and accomplished.
Well, you've certainly worked here, which is, it just blew me away with what you've been through. I can relate to some of the challenges you've had to go through, but not all. Some of them are just mind blowing. So I'm really, really, truly honored. And I want to kind of say before I say anything about the way I'm approaching today's conversation, I'm not here to analyze Randi-Lee. I'm not here to diagnose her. I'm not here to tell her what her experiences means. That's not how I work, especially not therapeutically. And for me, the person sitting in front of me is the expert of their own experience. And my role here is to be curious, to listen. As we discovered earlier, I talk a lot, so that's going to be a challenge for me, and reflect and create space. And sometimes, to ask questions underneath the question, if you like. And that's very much kind of influenced by the person-centered approach of one of the famous psychologists, Carl Rogers, who believe that deeply, in the importance of empathy, authenticity, and, unconditional possible regard. And one of the most powerful ideas, which has always stuck with me, is, the curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. And there's such a powerful thing there. And hearing your story and all these other people, I'm not saying all these theories are exactly right, but these ideas are amazing sometimes, especially from what you've discovered with yourself. So thank you so much again for joining me, Randi-Lee. It generally is such a big pleasure. And I'd, I'd really like to begin before the author, before the athlete, before the advocate, and before the person who's interviewed all these people. I'd really like to meet kind of the young Randi-Lee. You was diagnosed at such a young age with depression. I believe it was the age of 14. And when you look back at that young girl now, what do you remember?
That was awful. That's
Mm.
the short answer. Um, so going way back in the day, my daughter likes to remind me how old I am. Um, so going back there to the 1900s, um, there's a girl at work who is a 2000s baby, so she likes to remind the rest of us in the office about the 1900s. So I'm a
Sure.
1900s baby. Yeah, I started now when I look back. So I wasn't diagnosed at 14, but when I finally went to therapy in my 20s, we went, oh, back when you were 14, it started. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. So way back then, so I'm in Canada. When you were 14, that's generally when you were starting high school, grade 9. And high school is never fun. And if it is fun, well, good for you.
Sure.
I did not enjoy my high school experience at all. So, give you a little bit of background because there's a little bit of a lead up to that. Um, as a little cute child, I'm still cute, but when I was little and cute, um, I would go to my dad's every other week. I don't remember my mom and dad ever actually being together as a couple. I lived with my mom and my older brother. He was 4 years older than me for most of my life. Like I said, I'd go to my dad's every other week. My brother and I had the same mom, different dads, but my brother would come with me to my dad's house until my brother was around 12. And then he decided, nope, I'm not going anymore because your dad's I don't know if I can swear, but yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and so I was like, but no, no. And my mom would continue to force me to go. Um, which I have some love-hate feelings about because obviously I was yelling and screaming and crying to not go for a reason. But I had fun when I was there because my dad actually lived at my nana's house and my nana was the best. Like
Brilliant.
picture sweet old lady baking cookies all day long. Like that was my nana. And
Play.
her baking, oh my gosh, if only I could have it again. Um, and a few doors down from her were my cousins and my uncle. So, I mean, I had so much fun. I would always be at my Uncle Barry's house and we would have so much fun there playing. And they lived on farms. So I love to climb trees and play in the mud and all that fun stuff.
Sure.
So as I got older, though, I realized, oh, my dad is kind of so I didn't want to go no more. By then, my dad had two little girls, my sisters, who I loved to bits and pieces, but we are a decade and a little bit more than a decade apart.
Sure.
And so by that time, though, I could see my sisters without my dad. I would just call up their mom. Well, my mom would call up their mom. And we would arrange like a little play date type deal. So kind of didn't really talk to my dad. So that was a little bit, a little bit of trauma in my younger years here and there. And then when I was in grade 8 and graduating, and there was bullying and different things happening in school. Not as bad for me as it was for my brother. My brother got it real bad, but I was like, yeah, my shirt's from Zellers. I don't care. I love it. Um, so basically, if you don't know what Zellers is, it was the poor people store.
Sure. Yeah. Bless you. Yeah.
um, It doesn't exist anymore, actually, it closed, entirely, I don't know, like a decade ago or something. So, yeah, and then when I was in grade 8, my brother so my at that point, my brother had been in and out of jail countless times. He was doing drugs, it was just awful. Our house was robbed because of a friend that he knew had robbed us, and it was absolutely horrific because when you're big brother who you think the world of growing up, all of a sudden is this completely different person. It's quite traumatizing in and of itself when you're just little, right? So, he probably started using when he was in high school. So let's say he was about 14. I would have been 10. Right? So I didn't understand it. My mom gave me a very sheltered life. I didn't understand any of
Yeah,
that. I didn't understand why my brother would yell and scream. I remember him one day coming home covered in blood because he got in a fight. And so it was very scary because I didn't understand what was happening. And back in the 1900s, you didn't talk about that stuff either. You kept it all in the house. You didn't talk about anything that was wrong. You just deal with it. Pick
yeah,
yourself up, go to school, do your stuff.
sure,
Um, so I'm glad that it's not as bad as it used to be that way. And so, my brother was in jail for almost a whole year between that grade 8 to grade 9. And that's a really important part. So in grade 8, I graduated. We moved from the city we're living to the city right next door. Like they share the same bus routes. It's not far.
sure,
Um, but we did move to another house. And my mom also got married to somebody that was my uncle's friend. My uncle was an alcoholic. Um, his friends were alcoholics. And so I don't know what possessed my mom to be like, "Yes, I wanna marry this person who I have not really liked my whole life, and all of a sudden I'm in love with him." I don't know. Anyway, it's I'm still working through that
sure,
one. So, we move into this house and things are okay. They were fine-ish, as best as they can be. Of course, I'm starting school, I'm having to meet new people because, high school is this whole other thing. I don't really like meeting new people, but it is what it is. Um, and then my brother, as I'm nearing the end of grade 9, my brother gets out of jail. So he was in there for almost a year. He is now 18. He's coming out. I haven't seen him in a very long time because my mom would go and visit him in jail, but I never went because, again, very sheltered. My mom tried to keep me
sure,
in this bubble, which she thought was protecting me, which I see now as a parent. But at the time, I'm like, this is not helpful at all. Um, so he got out of jail, and my mom said, "We're not telling him where we live because of all the stuff that happened before." She says, "I will rent." My mom was renting him a room. She would visit him. So he wasn't completely cut out, but it was, let's keep it kind of separate because we know the drama and the trauma that he will bring. Oh, it rhymes. Um, but my ex stepdad, being the buddy that he wanted to be with Brandon, um, that it didn't go well. My grandma also didn't really fully understand the extent of things, and so she kept bugging my mom, "Oh, you have to tell him, yeah, I don't like keeping a secret," and all this stuff. This grandma, my mom's mom, complete opposite from my nana. It was not the baked cookies, it was the go clean your room kind of grandma.
yeah, got ya,
Totally different, like
sure,
polar opposites. Um, so then eventually my brother found out. I don't know exactly who told him, but he found out where we lived. And then my stepdad said, "Yeah, of course you can come live with us." And that's kind of when stuff hit the fan. Um,
sure,
so again, I am now probably going on 15-ish, and my mom's ex-husband, he started drinking even more and becoming very verbally abusive. My mom would send me upstairs as soon as things would start. I could hear it, but I wasn't involved per se. But again, not talking about it, not helpful. Um, so I'd be sent upstairs and I could hear screaming and yelling, and then my brother would be there, and it was just this this whole thing. I didn't know what was going on. I am this young kid. Turns out I'm autistic too. So, I mean, I have no idea what's happening, can't understand at all, and being forced to hide in my room. And that was most of most of my teenage years was hiding in my room away from everything that was going on, not understanding, hating my life, wanting to end my life because I didn't see an escape. There was no way out. So I very much considered it. I had plans. I wrote goodbye letters. Um, Everything you can think of other than actually going through with it. I went all the way up to just before doing it. I considered running away. That was a big thing too. And I mean, I kind of ran away when I was 17. So when I was 17, my friend was like, "Enough is enough. Like, come move in with my parents and stuff." And they did. So, essentially, I did run away at one
Sure.
point. So I'm 17, I'm packing up my I've actually never told this part of my story anywhere, so,
Thank
this
you.
is yeah. Um, so I'm packing my stuff up, my mom comes home one day, this is probably August because it was just before the school year started, and she comes into the room, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm leaving." And she starts crying, and I didn't know how to process that because 'cause you're crying that I'm leaving, but at the same time, you ignore me. This is how I'm feeling, right, at the time. You ignore me, you not lock me, but essentially lock me in my room without physically locking it, but you're sending me to my room, you're telling me to hide, I'm not involved in anything, you don't spend time with me anymore. Because as a young kid, my mom spent tons of time with me. And then all of a sudden she's too busy worrying about my brother, worrying about my alcoholic stepfather. Like, I I was the lost child at this point, so I felt unwanted, unloved, like nothing mattered. And so I was like, "I'm leaving." And I went and I moved in with my friend, for probably a good 8 months, I think, about. And during that time, my mom did end up separating from her ex-husband. Um, my brother had like, throughout my high school years, he actually had a couple kids. Um, and trying to think, 'cause it's sometimes you really your memory kind of doesn't wanna remember
Sure.
everything, right?
Sure. Take your time.
So I did move back home for a hot second, but if you've ever moved out and then moved back home, it's not the same. It doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely done that.
You're right, it doesn't work well. So I moved back home probably about 2 months before I moved out again, to an apartment with a coworker and her friend. They were fantastic, however, that led to a whole other issue. But that is the girl before all the stuff.
Well, I can only imagine it, the child being locked away, in the room, if you like, and kind of not really being able to reach out to anybody. And like what you said, in that sort of generation, a younger generation, I know too well myself, we didn't really share our feelings. It was like toughen it up and go and do what you need to do. So what did we do? Definitely in regards to my stepfather, I mean, even the thought of being able to share emotions with them. If I ever went in crying, it'd be like, go out there and deal with them. If you don't, I'm going to give you a good hiding. So there was no, it's so interesting, isn't it? How we have that sort of upbringing and how we recognize that and reflect on that. And, nowadays, obviously, we do. I always say to people in regards to especially children, I said, it's letting them learn to be who they are. Because again, otherwise, if you suppress them one way or another, they are going to rebel. And hence, this is what we tend to do. And it's just such a you know, tough journey at such a young age. I could imagine, obviously by the looks like it was going through like a depressive state, if you like, because sometimes we kind of use that word depression very clinically at times, but for your young person, it might simply be like, I don't want to get out of bed, or I don't understand why I feel like this, and I don't feel like I belong. I think that can be quite a big one as well. And I presume you obviously had those words bouncing around at such a young age, and let's be honest, not really understanding them. Did you kind of have that sort of stuff going on for you?
For sure, there was all sorts of my brain was very nasty to me. It still is at times. My
Yeah,
brain is a jerk.
sure.
Um, I actually had my kid's a really good artist, so part of as part of my show, I have a merch store, and I got her to draw this really cute design that says, "Don't believe everything you think." And it's a dinosaur because she loves dinosaurs, and it has a
Okay.
train coming out of its head. Becau
Excellent.
and that's what it is. I had to, through therapy, I learned to not trust everything that my brain was telling me because it's a jerk. It's a
Yeah.
big fat liar.
Yeah.
Um, but as a young person, I mean, you don't know that it's a liar because nobody's talking about it. You think, okay, then maybe this was my thought. Everybody hates themselves. Everybody thinks they're ugly. Everyone thinks they're fat. Everyone thinks they're stupid. Doesn't matter what my grades were saying. Doesn't matter what other people were saying. My brain was telling me I was the worst thing in the world and nobody would care if I was gone.
Sure. That's it. Yeah, knocked me back. Thank you for sharing that. And I can really empathize with what you're saying there, especially such a young age, a vulnerable child, and not having that support and thinking you're the worst person ever, put on the planet, if you like. And again, I know it all too well. As you know, with our lived experience and professional careers, we still have those thoughts. Like you said, the brain being a jerk. I've done it myself different times where I've worked really hard and, as you know from where the hours I'm doing them, and it have been a bit crazy, but I have stepped back and, like you said, we recalculate and we're like, hang on a minute, stop, get yourself structured, and we're always learning, aren't we? But we're our own worst enemy, and it's just kind of you know just from what you're saying there, thinking about, what's really kind of important as adults, we sometimes look backwards at, young people and kind of interpretate their behavior, through our kind of adult lens, if you like.
Yes.
But a young person may not have that, that vocabulary, as I said earlier, and it's so really hard. We can feel depressed, we don't feel safe, it can come out in anger. That's definitely one of the strong ones, withdrawal or avoidance, and even risk taking sometimes, or simply as we do, shut down. And I kind of tend to, what I've learned through, growing as a therapist, is I have to try and look beyond the favor of behavior, sorry, especially if it's young people, and especially people quite angry and guarded. There's so much hidden behind that, if you like. And now I find myself, years back before I went into this line of work, I mean, I was in the music industry. I had a class A addiction for 15 years. And I mean, if I saw somebody responding like that, I would be questioning, saying, well, what's wrong with that person? Where now it's kind of like, what is this kind of behavior communicating here? What's going on there? So it shows how much we make that massive transition, don't we, in regards to how we was before to who we are today. And well, what's really interesting, were there actually people around you able to be able to see, how much you were really struggling, if you like, because you got all this stuff going on?
So, I mean, at home, like I said, I was the forgotten child. So my mom had zero idea. We've talked about it as an adult, especially since I've written about it. I write a lot of nonfiction. And so she's read not everything I've written, but she did read my first book, which was the poems that I wrote as a teenager,
Wow.
literally explaining exactly how I was going to hurt myself. And she's like, I had no idea. I was a horrible mom. And I'm like, well, not horrible, but you coulda did better.
Sure.
Right?
Uh,
But, again, through therapy, I had to learn she did the best she could with the tools that she had at the time. So
and
putting it into perspective.
and what amazing, just hearing that you let your mum read your book, and something which is really personal to you at a young age, and mum didn't know. I could imagine that was hell of a lot of kind of reflection for mum there, especially with
Yeah.
that. God, I really admire you guys being able to do that as, mother and daughter, especially something which went on for so long. Yeah, I was quite moved by that, Randi-Lee. So I'm just kind of reflecting, thinking my therapy head's bouncing on. I'm ignoring it, but in general, I could imagine that being such a powerful transformation for both of you, through that kind of experience of what Mum really didn't see as Randi-Lee as a child. I find that, yeah, that's really moving. I can imagine, as I said to some of my clients, all my podcasts have been so moving. So I can imagine eventually I'm going to have this little moment every so often, Randy, around and say, "You have to give me 2 minutes." So it's really moving. I can feel it building, but I'm holding. and
Oh, that's good because there's always more to my story.
and
Um,
I mean, we obviously with people around you, it, it can be really important to have that because somebody can be suffering, sorry, absolutely enormously, and while appearing completely fine, kids go to school, they work, they laugh, they talk, they post on social media. That's one of the big things, which is, I've been getting into that and promoting my work over the past few years, and I've always been arm's length of it because I haven't wanted to be drawn into it, but I've started to get the habit like everyone else now. But it's been a real big eye opener, especially social media, people reaching out on that side. And it,
really glad that social media was not really a thing when I was a teenager because I think it would have made me feel worse about myself.
yeah, yeah,
Right?
I totally agree. Do you know what? I'm kind of, as crazy as it sounds, as old as I'm getting now, I am really, even though there's been challenges there in my life, but I found that it's been really helpful for me to be a bit more arm's length from the younger generations who've had to kind of go through this and been brought up around it. It's a whole new way of communication for me, and it's a big eye opener. But I do try to have my boundaries in place, and when I need to switch off, I will switch off from everything. I won't justify why I've vanished. It's like I need a bit of downtime, and as we know, as what we're trained in, healthy boundaries. And some people don't like that, but the harsh reality is, as long as I'm okay, I have to make sure I'm okay for sometimes. And
Say it's not necessarily people don't like it, it's maybe that people don't understand it.
yeah, I quite agree. Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there.
Because it took me a long time and I'm still learning it because if you're not taught it, it's not something that's innate.
No, and what's really interesting, I find myself, I feel I've got better at my boundaries, but even sometimes when I put my boundaries in place, or if I'm assertive to people, I sit back and I'm like, "Oh, was I a little bit harsh?" And so it's always that fine tuning, isn't it? We're always questioning that side of things. But
Yeah.
you hit the nail on the there is how they kind of receive it, isn't it? And how they work with it. And yeah, it's very interesting that we still got to adapt to this day, and we're always going to be forever learning. And I kind of, if we have a kind of look at, it's kind of simply looking at, I believe in you. I can hear, how difficult this is, and you don't have to pretend to be me. And it's having these open, words to people and sayings, just so people start opening up. And obviously I had to look in the past in regards to, suicidal thoughts. I was looking at so much of your stuff. And as I said, I've had such limited time and I was flying through it. I've been chipping away at some of your stuff this week. And like, obviously with you speaking publicly about suicidal thoughts and periods of life where, which become incredibly difficult. And I want to kind of approach it with care, really. When somebody reaches to the point where they don't know if they can continue, let's say, and sometimes what they're really communicating isn't necessarily, I want my life to end. Sometimes underneath it can be, I desperately need this pain to stop. So so kind of looking back, what do you think you were really trying to escape from in that time?
Um, the pain. Yeah. So, I mean, pain comes in so many different forms, right? So, a lot of times we say the word pain and we think physical. Which, I mean, it can manifest itself physically.
Hmm.
However, the pain of not feeling like you belong, the pain of not feeling loved. So, to kind of go back just a little bit, so you had asked a question about the people around me, and I said about my family. But my friends, they didn't really know either because when you go to school, you put on a mask, you pretend. I was really great at pretending that things were okay. I also was really great at pretending that I knew what was happening, right? So everybody's pairing off and wanting to go and date and do these things. And I'm like, this does not seem amusing to me, but this is what we're supposed to do. So I guess, sure, let's go on a date. So mimicking everybody around you. Um, that's part of the pain though, is not feeling like you know who you are. So wanting to escape that need to mimic and need to mask and need to be fitting in when I was not meant to fit in. That's not who I am, and I'm okay with that now.
Yeah.
But as a teenager, that's what everyone wants. You want to fit in, and that's
Cool.
not always possible with the people that you're trying to fit in with. I believe everybody has a place to fit in because I've found my place now. Talking to people like you, I've got a couple real good friends. I've been
Yeah.
married a long time now. Like
Excellent.
I found it. But as a
Excellent.
teenager, I was trying to fit into the group that was like trying to accept me. So I'm just gonna smush myself in there
Yeah.
and make it work.
Mhm.
And that made me feel worse. Um, and then it didn't help that I mean, my teachers at the time, all through high school, I mean, you've got 4 different teachers each semester, 4 years of high school. Of all of those times, one teacher asked me what was wrong. One. Um, and it was my drama teacher because I love drama. Love it so much. I was gonna be a famous actor and, still working on it. Um, so I was gonna drop the class because I there was so much going on, I couldn't focus. So when you are so in the trauma, you are so in all of the crap that's happening, and your brain won't stop telling you all these nasty things. You can't focus. There was this really big project that was like half of your grade, and I couldn't do it. Like I just couldn't focus enough to do it. And so my teacher was like, what's going on? Like this is your favorite class. You're really, really good at it. What is happening? And I'm like, I can't. And so I told him little snippets. I didn't tell him everything, but I told him little snippets. And he's like, you know what? You can have an extension. And that meant the world to me because finally somebody saw me and finally somebody was like, "You need help." It wasn't every kind of help that I need, but it was something to make me go, "Oh, okay. I can do this." And so I didn't end up dropping the class. I had a great time because it was drama class and I loved it. But it was one teacher out of all 4 years of all that stuff going on, one teacher noticed that something was wrong. I had other teachers yell at me to pay attention in class, or I had a science teacher that told me I would never amount to anything. So
Yeah.
just like you were saying, what's the behind the behavior? That's the question that should have been asked, not telling a young kid that they're not going to do any good, that they need to pay attention, that they need to do these things. Because I was writing these poems in English class. I would sit in the back seat because I didn't like people behind me, and I'd be writing about how I'm going to hurt myself. And instead of the teacher taking 2 seconds to be like, "Hey, what are you writing?" Um, it was stop. So it was very frustrating. So having to mask and having to do all that just
I must admit, I can so relate to some of the things you say there, and this happens in life, doesn't it? When we're going through, like you said, going through so much crap all at once. And let's be honest, how many times have I thought of just going off to the woods and not coming back again? Because you want to escape, it becomes too much, and just one person doing something so simple to ask if you're okay, or just this little minute thing, people don't realize how much of a big thing it is to us. Just kind of helping out with something small, and can create such a kind of interesting journey and awareness, if you like, and question of, hang a minute, I can, like what you said earlier, that, oh, I can get through this. I can do this. So it gives us that bit of kind of hope, if you like. And so I find that really, really powerful. And it's such a shame that there's so many teachers who didn't see that child going through tough times, especially when they was writing their poem in the classroom, but at the same time, as crazy as it sounds, that's such an amazing lived experience for you to be able to share that with the other young Randy-Lees out there who might not have their own answer, and hence that's why, I was so keen to get you on there. Like I've always said to people, I'm not interested in fame and fortune. I don't really care. But if there was that one Randy-Lee out there who's listened to this podcast, go, oh my God, I can really relate to what she's saying here. I think I've done my bit, or especially I should say you've done your bit. And that's the whole purpose of this. And it's such a lonely road, isn't it? And so hard to, you know, break that barrier of fear, if you like. And you made like important distinctions there, and because we have to take, suicide thoughts seriously. I mean, but we need to also listen to for the pain underneath them, and what has become unbearable. What does the person believe will never change, and what have they lost hope in? What do they need? And if anyone listening recognizes themselves in this conversation, seriously, and Randy-Lee will back me up on this, please don't carry it alone. I mean, you don't have to solve your entire life tonight. And sometimes the first step is simply telling somebody is that I'm struggling, which, as we know, is I find it with myself. I can be a bit more open with experience, and similar to yourself, I do see a therapist myself every so often. I have to have my clinical supervisions because of my caseloads. But again, I'm more comfortable saying, I'm struggling a little bit here, where before that's so hard to be able to kind of let people know on that. So it's such an amazing in-depth life experience you had, and I can only imagine how that's really helped you, help so many others with your work as well. And again, there's something again I use some of my theories and ideas, from some of the psychologists, and Rogers again that I keep coming back to is when I accept myself, just as I am, then I can change. And again, that's always come back to me. And when we have those years of believing, I'm broken or I'm too much or difficult, as you know, the big one as well, well, you highlighted that earlier in regards to, there's something wrong with me. And did you spend kind of part of your younger life believing that there was something kind of fundamentally wrong with you, if you like, at such a young age?
I don't know if I thought it in that specific way, but I definitely knew that I didn't fit. Um, so even as so we've talked a lot about teenagers, but even as a young kid, my mom and my godmother, they would tell these stories and they would laugh so hard about them, about how this one time Randy was doing fill in the blanks, but basically all of these stories where Randy had a meltdown and because of something simple, and then she would get locked in her room because my mom was told that I needed more discipline. And now that I'm older and they tell these stories, I'm like, they're not funny. That's not funny. You know what was actually happening right then? Was I was yelling and screaming because I didn't understand what was happening and I didn't know how to ask for help. And the stunned looks that I get when I'm like, that's not
Yeah.
like you're saying it's so funny because Randy had a meltdown at McDonald's because she couldn't exchange a toy. There was this one specific one. Um, I was probably 6 or 7, and I have a grandson, so as soon as I say 6 or 7, it's in my head, 6, 7. And so, I remember my brother used to tell this story too, and they'd say, "Oh, yeah, and she had this huge meltdown because she wanted a toy. She wanted to change the toy in the Happy Meal to a different one, but she wasn't allowed to do it." And my brother was so embarrassed and all this stuff. And I looked at them the one day and I said, "Do you know why I was doing that?" Like, because you weren't getting your way. I said, had nothing to do with that. Had to do with the fact that I could see the toy that I wanted and I couldn't understand why they wouldn't exchange it. Because previous to that day, if you got like a Happy Meal toy and you wanted to exchange it for a different one, you just went up to the counter and you exchanged it. No
Sure.
big deal. So in my, tiny little person mind, I'm like, I'm just going to exchange it. And they said no. And I couldn't understand why, and nobody was explaining why. So apparently the reason why was the one that you could see that was on display that was not allowed to be traded out. Oh my gosh, it's so simple. It
Yeah.
is so simple. But instead of explaining that one's for display, they're not allowed to give it out, it was just no. Stop complaining. Stop whining. Stop doing that. Why do you have to be so difficult? That's my
Yeah.
mom's favorite line. Why do you have to be so difficult? Because I don't understand. Why is today different than yesterday, than the day before, right? Like, I don't understand. And so if somebody would have taken 2 seconds to explain the reason, I
Hmm.
would have went, "Oh,"
Yeah. Would have made
and
sense.
that was so much of my like younger years, like I'm talking single digit years, with so much of, I don't understand. I'm having this giant meltdown. And my mom would put me in my room and shut the door and hold it shut because that's what she was told to do. The doctor said I needed more discipline.
It's unbelievable the advice was given all those years back, and just even the thought now is quite shocking, isn't it? And people generally want to know how we kind of grow into who we are, and then we've got to kind of relearn who we are, if you like, because we've had to suppress so much stuff there. And I mean, what kind of happened when you started to kind of question your beliefs? Because again, we're going back to kind of like the teacher who it sounded like quite a big shift there. And what kind of happen when you start to kind of question your belief, because there's a huge difference between, something is wrong with me to something that happened to me. And I need to understand that. And I can see you having that big shift through childhood. So, when did you start to kind of question that?
That was definitely not until probably my mid-20s, before it really came to a head. Because once I did move out, things were sort of fine, right? They were
Hmm.
normalized-ish, right? Like, they go from this crazy, "I don't know what I'm gonna go home to because I don't know if somebody's already drinking," to, "I'm going home and I know what to expect. I'm going to my home and I know what to expect." So, eh, things kind of calmed down. And for those who have depression, you know that it's not necessarily all the time. It can come and go, right? You have good days and bad days. So, um, and I went to college and I had more good days than bad days. So I didn't really spend a whole lot of time on it. I thought, I'm out of that situation. Everything is fine. It was just the situation. Um, then more things happen in life. And, depression again comes and goes, good days
Yeah,
and bad days. And
sure.
so it wasn't until I had some bad days in my 20s that I went, huh, now that I have more life experience, now that I've been to college and taken some psychology courses
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
learned some things, I'm like, there's actually a term for this. There's actually reasons for these thoughts and feelings. So it wasn't really until then that I went, huh, I could go and get help. That this doesn't have to be forever.
Sure, sure. Yeah, that's really interesting. Though, what was such a transition of that penny drop moment, isn't it? Like you said, when you're training with psychology, and again, I can really relate to a transition of when I said to you many years back, I went to my dark place and I dealt with it completely differently to when I had something happen quite a few years back. And I sat there and I was like, oh, okay, we've been here before. You've got the tools and got the ideas. Why are you going to go back to your old ways? And then we start doing something about that. It's kind of like we need, two real big loops in life, don't we, to really kind of start at least question or try to understand why we are and how we behave to where we do. So I find that really fascinating that you've had that kind of switch around, which I think most of us do, especially within the professional sector, so to speak. And I mean, amongst all that, which was going on as well, and your training and not having like the dynamics of the home holding you back. And I mean, later on, obviously you received the diagnosis, including autism as well. I mean, again, I mean, when did you kind of, with everything else going on, and then you got another diagnosis chucked at you here, if you like. What what did it mean to you? When you start to kind of get your own, find your own answers, so to speak, and diagnosis there. What did that kind of mean to you, Randy Lee?
I went, "Aha!" That's the short word, "Aha!"
Brilliant.
Yay, woohoo! So my youngest was diagnosed with autism when she was 8. She's 19 now, so it's been a long time. But she looked at me the one day, we're sitting there, she looked at me, this has gotta be 5, 3, probably 6 years ago-ish, give or
Mm.
take, maybe 7, but somewhere in and around there. She looked at me and she goes, "Mom, if I have autism, I got it from you." And just went back to watching TV like, "No big deal, it's fine." And I stopped. I stopped where I was, and I was completely shocked. I was like, "Oh." And then all of a sudden, I had all of these moments flash before my eyes of me going, "She's not," like, talking about my daughter when people would say, "That's a little odd that your kid does this and that." I go, are you talking about? She's just like her mom. What are you talking about? She's just like her mom. What are you talking about? She's just like her mom." All of the moments came at me
Oh
all at
my
once, and I went, "You're right, she is just like her mom, and if she's just like her mom, then I bet you her mom does have autism." Oh, and then I went and found a place that does adult diagnosis and did all the tests and all that, and
wow.
ta-da!
Wow, I mean, was there because obviously with your awareness, what you've been through, 'cause you just obviously clear as day got huge awareness around you, and like I always said, we're always learning. And would you say there was kind of relief there? Because sometimes, a diagnosis can possibly sometimes, depending on the individual, bring grief, but it can also bring that huge understanding. And you suddenly look back at parts of your life and think, maybe I wasn't failing, or maybe I was experiencing the world
Yes,
differently. Did that
yes.
kind of happen to you?
100%, and that's why I said, "Aha," as the big answer, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
because when the doctor finally came back and said it, and, they go through the whole thing, you know how that goes, and we're gonna
Yeah.
explain everything,
Hmm.
and give you a 10-page report, um, which I, of course, afterwards dissect and look up everything.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, sure.
and but, yeah, I went and I looked back at my life and went, "This is why that happened. This is why this all makes sense now." If only somebody would have, because my mom did go to the doctor when I was younger and said, "There's something wrong, like, why is she behaving like this?" And it was simply, "She's not disciplined enough," which obviously was not the case.
Yeah,
But had they actually paid attention back then, because, girls couldn't get autism back then.
sure.
Girls were not born with it. We couldn't have it. Um, but if somebody would've listened to her way back then, I wonder how different things might have been. Not gonna dwell on it because I like where I am at in my life, but might have made things a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah, it sounds like you didn't get the opportunity to take the quicker route to life, so to speak. It's,
Right?
you know,
That game of life where it splits into 2 sections, the short one and the long one, I had to go with the long one.
yeah, it's crazy, isn't it, how we do that? But I mean, reflecting on who you've become now, I mean, you're very self-aware. You're doing amazing work, your books, your podcast. I mean, for me, that's why I was when we first got in touch in regards to you being here. I thought, oh my God, it's so inspiring. It's even moving me now, and I'm quite a thick-skinned guy, but my emotions do show every so often. So it's I'm so pleased for you. You had that kind of reality check moment and that kind of like, oh God, this makes sense, and reflecting back, and what a powerful thing for your own child to say. And children are so brutally honest, and they will say what they
Mhm.
feel, and saying, oh, I've got this from you, mum, and just carry on with their day. And there's mum reflecting and going, oh, thanks for that, I'm just going to reflect on my life now. So yeah, what a powerful transition which you had to make. And I think as kind of one thing of kind of talking about a little bit more is, different doesn't always automatically mean, you know, uh, deficient, if you like. And a diagnosis, shouldn't, as I say, I'm not a clinical psychologist. I'm far from it. I'm more behavior. It's crazy. It sounds. I don't. I shouldn't say I don't show interest in it. I tend to kind of be arm's length to the diagnosis of things. I kind of always look, okay, you got your diagnosis. What can you do as a person? So I kind of find that really fascinating. And, we've got what we got, and how do you work with that? I'm definitely, and as we know, with certain diagnoses, they intertwine with it one another. And even as a therapist and working with my job in the NHS, they do cross over, and you're like, is it, isn't it? So we're always questioning, and sometimes, things come up within ourselves as practitioners. Well, I can relate to some of that. Welcome to becoming a therapist. And I mean, as I was saying, diagnosis not becoming a box, and, can become a map for ourselves, and a way of understanding ourselves. So, I'm huge fans of Carl Rogers and Carl Jung's theories. As amazing as what they are, somewhat similar and different. And there's a Carl Jung quote who feels really relevant here. It's a privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And I think that's really such a beautiful way of looking at some sort of kind of psychological development, if you like. We're often told, as who we're supposed to be, what we're supposed to look like, how we behave, what relation you made a highlight point, what relationship should look like. And you being so young with that master, I suppose this is what it is. And even what happiness should look like. And perhaps part of healing is kind of beginning to ask kind of like who am I when I stop trying to become who everyone wants me to be, I suppose. And did receiving that your diagnosis really help you kind of move towards that? A silly question, really, because I think you've answered most of that. But would you find that that's kind of giving you that help to find that answer for yourself and recognizing who you
Yeah.
are?
So I mean, I've already said it was a aha about who I was, right? And why I felt like I didn't fit in and why things never made sense. And then I kind of went, "Hmm, well, now that I know this," and by that point I had known quite a bit about autism because I had to learn a lot for my kid, right?
Yeah,
So I was like, if these things are working for her, this type of scheduling or color coding or whatever it happened to be, can I use those to help me? Um, yes, yes, I can. But so using some of the stuff that I learned for her helped me. And then also going, wow, I don't have to be so hard on myself because there's a reason why I don't think like everybody else.
yeah,
I don't need to pretend that I understand things anymore. And that was the moment. So I used to always go when people would talk, and I was just like, yep, okay, yep. And then I'd wait until later, and I'd be like to my husband or whatever, be like, I have no idea what they were talking about because I didn't want to sound stupid, right? But now when somebody's talking, I'll be like, I actually don't understand what you mean. Can you be more specific? Because that's the thing, if somebody doesn't ask a specific question or whatever, and it's this kind of very broad thing, I'm like, "I don't know what you want."
yeah,
Like, I have no idea what
sure,
it is that you want, but as soon as they give me they reword it in a different way or they specify it a little bit better, I'm like, "Oh, I got this. Okay, cool. Let's go."
sure.
Um,
And
and
I find it really fascinating, especially on the autism side. I'm definitely no expert here, and I do love the open and honesty which can happen, especially when you recognise who you are, and I really love that in people, especially on the autism spectrum, if you like. And it's just so amazing how people have had to adjust their lives in their way. They've got their diagnosis, how they work with that. And like, you've done such an amazing transformation again, going from where you was as a child for your diagnosis to your own child pretty much saying, oh, mum, this is what you've given me, to where you are today. That's such an amazing and inspiring transition. I only Yeah, it's just like with your podcast, how you come across, you've got that energetic side, and that's why I'm so keen to get you on here. And I could imagine there's so many people out there who you've worked with who can really relate to you because you're being honest, you're being open, you're being authentic, you're being real. You're not giving people the, bull crap of sometimes in this profession can be out there. And most importantly, you're meeting them with compassion. I can only imagine what it's like for you working with people. Love to be on the fly of the wall, especially when I'm like, oh my God, she understands me. And you being on the other side, I bet that's quite nice. And I know it all too well when, a client reaches out and they're kind of like, God, do you actually get me? It's instead of being the person sat there trying to receive the help, now you're the person kind of, having that kind of not reassurance, but having that person open up to say, do you know what, Randy, you really do get me. So having that transition, I can imagine, is just absolutely amazing, and I really admire you done that. It's quite not empowering, but it's quite exciting. I'm like, oh my God, and then I start throwing tools at my clients, and I'm quite bad at that. So I'm like, right, I've got an idea, quick, pick these up, and yeah, I mean, massive transition, and it's kind of what Carl Young spoke about in regards to like individuation, and not becoming perfect, not becoming somebody who, completely different, if you like, but generally becoming whole, and understanding different parts of ourself, including parts we've rejected. And if you could kind of sit across, and this would be an interesting one here, if you could sit across the 14-year-old Randy Lee of today, you know, what would you tell her?
you know what's funny is in, the one book I wrote specifically about, like, about sharing my story with depression and stuff. In the first or second chapter, I can't remember which one I put it in now, but I said one of the really helpful tools is to write a letter to your younger self, and I did. So you can actually get the whole thing of what I would have told younger
Excellent.
me, in that book, but basically what I would have said is, "You are not meant to fit in. You are meant to fit out, and that is so okay. And when you figure that out, life is going to be so much better.
Excellent. And when you look at that, because we can go roughly what I can remember what brain cells I've got left to our young child, and something like that was so simple, just them words, that child could have so picked that up, in a positive way, and kind of get them questioning themselves. So yeah, the transition, I can only imagine with your work you've done, uh, and just kind of being that kind of more the outsider now, helicopter view, if you like, looking into the world and being that supportive person. It's such an amazing transition to make. And I think it's, something so powerful for somebody listening. And it's what I tend to do with some of my clients is, what would you say to them younger self? And it can be such a powerful thing, like you said, to reflect on that. Oh my God, it's such a huge, amazing tool and technique to use. And people don't realize until they do it, because as you know yourself, we think of these things, really writing to my younger self, how's that going to help me? I'm here, until you do it. And then you're like, oh, okay, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
and I mean, so kind of sometimes we kind of look back, don't we, our younger self, and ask, why didn't we cope better? And perhaps, the better question is, what was the younger version of me doing to survive, if you like? They working with the tools they had, or they didn't even have the answers we have now, so to speak. And perhaps, compassion begins with, stop judging the person who we used to be. Um, and again, this kind of leads on to more, if you like, because again, another diagnosis in regards, if you don't mind me exploring some of this, in regards to your complex post-traumatic stress. I mean, again, there's all this huge journey as a child to where you are, and this huge journey of self-discovery, if you like. And then, complex post-traumatic stress comes in. And again, another diagnosis. Again, what did that kind of mean to you there as well?
So I mean, I thought at the time that I probably had something else going on, like, 'cause, depression only explains so much, autism only explains so much kind of thing. Um, the CPTSD probably was the last diagnosis that I had, and that was just a couple of years ago. Um, and so I went back to therapy, because and I had already been married for like 10 years, something like that. We've already been together a long time. But when my husband would yell, and it's not often, and the actual, say, straw that broke the camel's back for it. So the puppy that I brought home when he said, "No, we don't need another dog." I was like, "Yes, this puppy is coming home. He's
Oh, the
adorable. I
things we
love
do
him."
in relationships.
He had ran downstairs where he's not allowed to go into the basement, ran around and knocked over my husband's new TV. So, I mean, justifiably, he was pissed. So he is yelling, not at me by any means. Like, he wasn't blaming me or anything. He wasn't really even yelling so much at the dog, but more just yelling at, why is this broken? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Right? More just at the whole situation. And I could feel myself go like, oh my gosh, he's yelling. I'm in trouble. I gotta go hide. I gotta, right? And just absolutely horrific. And so and that had kind of been going on and off, like, for my whole adult life, really, but that specific moment really was like a shocker, because afterwards my husband goes, "Why are you acting like I'm gonna punch you? Like, why are you acting like I'm gonna hurt you?" I'm like, "Honestly, I know that you're not. Like, I know in my head that you're not. I know that you never would." Like, he doesn't even say hurtful things to me. Like, we tease each other, because I mean, he's bald and I have great hair. Um
And you got the kickboxing behind you as well,
Right,
Randy.
like
I'd be really cautious.
right? So, like, I know that he never would in my head, but my body and my whatever neurons firing, whatever, don't know that. And so when he said that, when that whole situation went down, I went, "Well, you know what? I've dealt with a lot of the other issues I have. Maybe it's time to deal with this one." Because again, it's not the first time it had happened. It was the first time, though, that I was in a place ready to explore that specific stuff. Because when you have as much fun in life as I have had, there's only so much that you can pick apart each week.
Course. Yeah.
So I finally went back and I said, "Look, this is what's happening." So we went through. whatever questions and all the stuff. And that's when therapist is like, yeah, I think you have this. And I went, oh my gosh, this makes sense. And it's all from basically all from when I was a teenager and a kid, like we had talked about all of that,
Yeah,
not knowing about what's going to happen, all that stuff. And so, we worked on this, like, trauma-informed book, right? Like, so every week we would go and I would bawl my eyes out. I would
sure.
tear me up,
Yeah,
bawl my eyes out. And
yeah.
then she'd go, "Okay, here's your homework for next week." And then I would go and I'd do all my homework, and it was all about reframing situations and understanding that no, now I am safe and now I'm an adult and now I can make my own decisions about situations and I'm not that little girl anymore and I'm not being forced to hide and all of that stuff, but reframing it all and reframing the well, no, it wasn't my fault that I had to go and hide. And where does the guilt lay? And why am I holding on to that? And this whole thing, um, which really oh my gosh, that just blew my world, and I'm like a whole other person having had dealt with all of that stuff and reframing how I think about so many situations.
That's again, I've said it before in some of my with some other female guests where I do a lot of comparisons because as we spoke earlier, a lot of my caseloads are males now. But excuse me, what's really interesting, you've really highlighted for me some of there how it can bring up like what you said, with your husband with the TV broken, yelling, and you jump straight into that vulnerable child mindset. I find that's opened up so much to me. Sincerely, thank you. Like I said, I'm not here to be your therapist, but that's really given me some insight how we can really jump back into that state of mind from something which can trigger us. And uh, again, for me as a therapist, I think one of the hardest things I've always found is when that person opposite me jumps into that vulnerable child state. Because again, I haven't trained into a therapist because you know, I want to be able to help that person the best I can, and I'm my worst enemy. And I always said to my clients when they're in that state, it's like if I could take that pain away from you, sincerely, I would. But we have to sit with them, which is probably one of the hardest things I think I found to be as a therapist. And for you to be able to recognize that and challenge it and have your supportive husband there as well, because again, that's going to throw him off. Well, why is she reacting like this? I'm not even shouting at her. So, what an amazing short transition you had to make to kind of reflect back and recognize, oh my God, I'm in that vulnerable child state and do something about it. That totally blows me away from your determination and resilience. I mean, you know yourself we've got to build our resilience up, and sometimes yourself we jump into that avoidance or pretend everything's okay, and what we're doing like the DBT therapies, we're doing opposite action, and you really took the leap of faith. You're like, okay, I've been here before, let's see what I've got, let's see how I can recognize this, and you took the leap of faith, and I so admire people how much balls that takes, whether male or female, for somebody to take that brave move, especially with your lived experience and the training you've done. And I'd love to be able to kind of be that fly on the wall and see your work, how you work with other younger generations. Randy-Lees, if you like. I could just imagine you're so good at your work and with your lived experience. And let's be honest, there hasn't been a walk in the park, if you like. You've had to really hit rock bottom and loads go on. And I could imagine you give so much to so many people out there. And trauma can change how we experience ourselves, other people, the world, and what people ever see as kind of overreaction, if you like. And may actually be, a nervous system saying, I've learned that this isn't safe, or that's why my trauma informed work matters, if you like. And instead of asking, why are you behaving like this, is asking, what happened to you. And yeah, thank you so much for giving me all this. You guys blow me away when I have so many amazing guests. I sometimes I get speechless because I'm trying to get into your world, and then it's all the emotions. Believe it or not, we feel it, don't we? As you know, and it's like, God, why can't I be a bit more thick-skinned? And you know, where things you did when you were younger, if you like, that you now understand, what are the things you did back then, sorry, when you were younger, that you now understand differently? Being I'll just say, more, I was gonna say elderly, then I could get into trouble. I always avoid it when it comes to females and age because we're terrible at it, us guys. When you become more older, I should say, Were there things you did when you were younger that you can definitely, kind of really identify now? Because obviously your child highlighted this, and like you said, you went into that vulnerable child moment in this situation with the TV. So do you
Yeah.
mm,
Yeah, so I definitely have. I mean, I think I've mentioned quite a few of them already. Like understanding why I would have meltdowns because that was pretty often. And understanding, why I tried to fit in the way that I did. Because there wasn't always great choices, but it was to fit in. And I mean, I would not do that now. I would just go find different people.
sure, yeah, sure,
But I can also remember even just when I would go to my dad's every other week because the rules weren't the same. And I couldn't wrap my head around why my dad would get mad at me because I didn't understand that the rules were different because they were never explicitly said. And now that I'm older and I know that I have autism and stuff, um, I need that. I need things explicitly stated. I don't beat around the bush. Just tell me straight up. And that's another thing. My mom used to always always used to tell me, "Oh, why do you have to say things like that? Can't you just say them nicely?" And I'm like, I'm just saying exactly what like I don't understand. I'm saying exactly what is happening. And people take it and perceive it in their way, whereas I'm not meaning it one way or the other. I'm just
yeah,
stating a fact.
yeah,
Um, and I mean, I still do that. I'll still state facts and people still be taken aback, but I'm like, this is a fact. So you take it however you want. This is a
yeah,
fact.
sure,
But going back to my dad, um, I remember this one time very explicitly. There was actually 2 times, but this time explicitly, we were camping, and he said, on whatever day it was, "That's the day we're going home." And then he decided, "Well, we're gonna stay an extra 3 days." And I start bawling. I am so upset because he's changing plans with he's changing what the routine, what the plan was. And it took me a very long time because even as an adult, I still when plans change, I still get I like
sure,
things that, that's why there's a plan.
yeah,
Um, my husband's really good about trying not to flip plans or when plans do flip, he's good about trying to approach me in a not freak out way. But so he and I'm crying and he goes, "I don't understand why you're crying. I'm your dad, so it's not like you should be homesick or anything." Again, has nothing to do with that. Yes, I wanted to go home because that was the plan. Had I known we were staying that many days,
yeah,
I would have been prepared for it,
yeah.
but I wasn't. And so I can remember there was a few moments kind of like that where I would be like so upset and he was like, "I don't understand why you're doing this." And would yell at me because he wasn't understanding. But yelling at me doesn't help your understanding.
No, sure.
Uh,
God, that continuous loop going round, and I kind of obviously, moving on in regards there. So you kind of went from kind of survival in regards to childhood, in regards there, and there was obviously cancer. I saw through there as well, and
mhm.
like you said before, we said about the podcast, you took the long way round, if you like, on the journey. I mean, if you don't mind me asking about some of that there, and with the cancer on
Yeah.
top.
So I was diagnosed with cancer, I want to say probably almost 9 years ago now. It's been a long time now. Getting old. So this is always my PSA for the females out there. Don't put off your regular pap screening. That's no, don't do that. And that's basically what happened. So there was so much other stuff going on in life with my kid and trying to get her diagnosed, trying to get her set up for school, and that's a whole other rabbit hole we could go down one day. But basically, I didn't have time to take care of myself, so I kept pushing off my regular female checkup, and I kept pushing off, and then I finally went, and so they do their thing, and calls me for, go get the follow-up appointment. So I go and he goes, "Okay, well, there's," and he uses big long doctor terms, squamous cells, something
Yeah,
or other. I don't know. But basically there was abnormal cells in my cervix. And I went, "Okay, what does this mean?" Right? Because obviously all of a sudden you're freaking out. He goes, "Well, we're gonna send you to an actual gynecologist," because it was the family doctor that did it. So he goes, "We're gonna send you to a gynecologist and they'll to take you next steps. Okay, cool. So get the appointment. I go to the gynecologist. They do a biopsy. And so they go, okay, well, we'll let you know in a few weeks what's up. It's okay, cool. And so I call him, go back for my follow-up appointment. He goes, okay, so we found some precancerous cells. That's what he called them. He said, there's some precancerous cells here. So we're gonna um, have a surgery, and we're just gonna take out that little portion there that it's affected. So, oh, okay, right. So not bad. No big deal. It's fine. It's just
Sure.
precancerous, just a little section. It's fine.
Mm,
Fine. So I go, I have what I call first surgery.
sure.
So I go, and this was just at the local hospital here that they did it. To put the IV in though, because I also have Raynaud's, so my hands are so cold, they have such a hard time finding my vein. So they had to wrap
Sure.
my arm up in like a warm blanket before they could find a
God.
vein.
Right.
So they did it, and then I go. I have the surgery. Everything is fine with the surgery. They said, okay, well, you'll go back to the gynecologist in about 8 weeks so that they can do the follow up, make sure everything's good. Cool, awesome. Um, 1 week later, I get a phone call. Just never good when you're supposed to wait 8 weeks and you get a phone call in 1 week. This is not good. I'm actually on my way out the door to take my daughter to her whatever appointment. She had some appointment. And they call and they're like, well, we need you to come in today. I'm like, today? Like I have plans. I got to take my kid. No, we really need you to come in today. I'm like, okay, let me call my in-laws, see if they can take her. So they did. My mother-in-law, they took her to her thing, and I go to the gynecologist. But they're fitting me in, right? So I don't have an appointment. So I'm sitting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And at the time, I didn't have my super fancy phone that has all my books on it to read. So I'm sitting there going, "Wow, I am super bored. I should have brought a
Yeah.
book." I'm also freaking out because, well, I shouldn't be here yet, and I'm still in pain because it's only been a week. So then I go into the back room and sitting there, and I go by myself because I didn't know I was going to have this appointment either. So I'm sitting there and I'm just waiting. And the doctor walks in. Before he even sits down, he goes, you have kids already, right? I'm like, mm-hmm, I sure do. Um, so then he finally sits down and he goes, I'm so sorry to have to tell you this, but you do have cancer. He said, we thought it was just a small portion, but you do have cancer and we are going to need to do a full hysterectomy. I was like, oh, okay. And just pure shock, right? And I just kept saying, that's fine. You just take it. And I kept like pointing to my stomach and like ripping it out for them. Like I could magically take it out myself. And I'm like, that's fine. I don't need it. You could take it. And the funny part that my husband and I joke about is about 2 or 3 years before that, he got a vasectomy because we weren't having more kids.
I-
So we're like super safe now.
okay. Yeah. Completely safe.
Right?
God.
So I kept going, well, you can take it. I don't need it. I don't need it. Like, you can have it. And he goes, well, you still have to finish healing because you just had surgery a week ago. He's like, so we can't do it yet. So we have to wait till you're healed and then we'll do the other one. So I said, okay, it's fine because I don't need it. So then the 8 weeks go by and I'm healed up enough. I go to the we have like a cancer hospital about 45 minutes from where I live. So I go there. And they do the surgery. It was so much fun. I remember waking up afterwards and freaking out because I didn't remember where I was and I didn't remember what was happening. And I'm like freaking out. And the amount of pain, it was worse than childbirth when I woke up, the amount of pain. And I'm like, and hyperventilating. The nurse runs over. She goes, okay, gotta calm down. You just gotta breathe, and reminding me everything that happened and where I was and all this stuff. I'm like, okay. And then I got a banana popsicle because that's the best flavor popsicle.
Sure.
And then I go into the recovery room, and the nurse in the recovery room was not nice. She was and so they make you go to the bathroom before they let you leave. And she kept saying, okay, you got to get up, you got to do it. But every time I would sit up, I would feel sick and like I'm going to fall down. So I'd lay back down. And she kept taking my blood pressure when I laid down. She should have been taking it when I stood up because that's when my blood pressure was dropping. So she
Sure.
was not very nice. She forced me basically to leave, and she gave me a little doggy bag before we even exited. So you're in a wheelchair because you're not allowed to, and plus walking was not fun. Before we even left the recovery room, I had already used the doggy bag and I need a new one. And I'm like, you sure I should go home right now? You sure? So about a few days later, I'm still trying to recover and do my best or whatever. And my husband's like, "You look really sick. Like, you don't look good." And I'm like, I'm fine. It's fine. I'm okay." And I'm like on the couch and I'm like, "Ugh." He's like,
Yeah.
"No, you are not fine." So he forces me to go to the emerge. We go to the emerge. I have never seen the emergency go so quickly. When it comes to, actual dying, they are right on it, which is the point.
Good. Yeah.
Um, but they're poking and prodding me because they're trying to find blood. I got no blood. I am so dehydrated, and my veins are hard to find to begin with. Um, so I had gotten an infection from the surgery. So I like to say cancer didn't almost kill me. It was the infection
The
from the
infection.
surgery that almost killed me. Oh my gosh. And yeah, I was going septic. So I stayed overnight there with the IV and all the antibiotics. So like, oh my gosh, like it's a good thing you brought her in. It was just insane, like, everything that happened, and it's, like, so vivid in my mind, and then they're like, "We're gonna send you for an ultrasound." I'm like, "Okay, cool." So they're like, "Don't go pee." I'm like, "Okay." But then ambulance comes in, so the ultrasound gets pushed back. I'm like, "Guys, I can't, like, I cannot hold this. I cannot hold," and they're like, "Okay, just go a little bit. Just go a little bit." I'm like, "Okay, I'll just go a little bit." Um so when they did the ultrasound, I totally peed myself. It's okay to admit it, girls. Like
Yeah.
it happens. My husband just brought me like fresh underwear or whatever. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I told you I couldn't hold it anymore. But then the ultrasound came back. They just wanted to make sure there was nothing else going on down there, so that was okay. And then yeah, when they sent me home with lots of antibiotics to flush everything else out, and that was whew, it was quite the thing. And then when I finally did go back to the doctor for like the other follow up, they're like, "We got it all. We did the test. Everything's fine." And I'm like, "So I'm not going to lose my hair." Like that was what I was
Yeah.
concerned about. I'm like, this is not okay. That's what I'm concerned about. But it's the weird, stupid things that you're worried about. And then even afterwards, so every that was happening. There was a whole thing with my kid. She was in and out the hospital herself for her own mental health. So I didn't even have time to really process any of this until like 2 years later. And so finally, I'm processing, and I'm still kind of processing it. I went, holy crap! I almost died. Like, I literally almost died, but I couldn't even, like, focus on that because I was so worried. I had to get her into a treatment place, and we had to do this and that and 10 other things. Um, and I go, "Holy moly." Like, I did almost die, and then, processing the fact that afterwards, I mean, when you have a hysterectomy, yes, we had decided not to have kids anymore. But the fact that I couldn't, that the choice was taken away from me, that was a whole other mind mess up because as much as we didn't want to have another child, I could have been a surrogate. I could have donated my eggs. I could have, right? Like all of
Yeah.
these other things that I probably never would have done. I really
Sure.
probably wouldn't have, but I couldn't anymore. The choice was taken from me,
Yeah.
which is such a messed up thing to like work out in your brain. Um, and then just after a hysterectomy, I'm sure other women can attest that you don't necessarily want intimacy after because it's not the same anymore down there. It is, but it's not because in your brain it's not.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
it was so much mess up just trying to deal with what was happening at home and then trying to realize why I didn't want any intimacy and putting it all together. And then, like I said, probably a good 2 years later was when it dawned on me I almost died and just all of this craziness all happened. And but yes, it's been like almost a decade now. We're good, we're clear.
Good. And that's, you're right. Like, just hearing it, I could. Your story is so moving. For well knowing that the warrior within, so to speak, could have been quite easy worst case scenarios, but you still fought through to making sure your daughter was okay, and kind of more focused on that and truly realizing how lucky you was. I mean it, and again, I so admire that. This just shows how much, thank you so much for sharing that with me. That oh god, it's actually even hit me a bit now. I knew it would. It normally does in some of these bloody podcasts. You people with your stories. So yeah, I mean, that's so inspiring, and kind of going into like the work you done with like, lived experiences, we know, I think is so beneficial to help people out, and especially what you've been through, especially the advice of females. There, as we know, we get offered different tests, and there's so many people out there who do avoid it. Oh, it won't happen to me, and unfortunately, you took part of that route, and then you had that real big wake up call, and obviously that's for you to kind of put that message out there to other females out there. So good on you, and hopefully the female listeners out there will hopefully take your sound advice. And so how a silly bit of a silly question here, but how do you kind of think your own lived experiences have influenced the way you work with others?
Lot, I think. I think when it comes down to it, my lived experience lets me look at somebody and go, "All right, what's your story?" Because we all got a story.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm kind of nosy. So that's why I like my podcast, because I tell my guests right up front, I'm like, "I'm just gonna interrupt you with questions because 'cause I'm nosy."
Love it.
Right? Because I wanna know about other people's stuff, and not for a malicious way, but because it does help me too. I'm I'm being a little bit greedy there. It's cheaper than therapy to do a podcast.
Sure, and but the thing is, again, I'm kind of say when you said nosy, I think I'd say more curious, because again,
Yeah.
you can clearly show empathy. You can really see that, and it's like I said, getting you on this show, and but again, you can really show that you care for these people, watching your podcast, how you are with people, you being yourself. And, I feel people really do draw with you because of that. And you're open and honest. I generally love that no matter what diagnosis anybody has, if you're open and honest and authentic, you're being yourself, and it is down to other people to figure that out, like you and I have had to do, and it's not an easy route, as you say, but it's kind of something really important there, lived experience, which, as we know, can. I've heard so many people say throughout my time that, oh, I'm a great listener, and oh, yes, I'm an empath, and you hear all this stuff. But I mean, lived experience can create such a, true empathy, as I'd say. So you can really feel with what that person's going through without that judgment, and putting your point across, if you like. And I could imagine you're really, really good at being able to do that. You're open, you're honest, you're genuine, you say what you feel. You can't get any more authentic and real than that. And I mean, but it doesn't kind of mean, we kind of automatically know somebody else's experiences. So I feel this kind of like being curious in what you do, how I've seen you with your guests, and there's so much curiosity going there for you. And I find that really amazing in yourself, because it's like you said, your podcasts are great. I mean, you're not there to dig up people's stuff and kind of throw it at them. And as we know in the world, I've seen so many kind of social media or influencers, we say, do this sort of stuff, and which I really don't like. No offense, okay, you might have some life experience, but you're an influencer. There's a big difference between training and becoming who we have within our careers. It's not a walk in the park. I'm not sure about you, because I nearly did go down the social worker training, and at the last minute I chose the therapy route. I'm kind of glad I went down that route, because, as we know, it's such a tough field, social worker on that side. And let's be honest, we're up against it all the time now. And I mean, your story so deserves to be heard, on its own terms, if you like. And that's why I look at kind of person-centered approach, if you like, which can, really resonate strongly with me. And the client remains, let's be honest, the expert in their own experience. And that's what I tend to use with my clients. I know before, when more diagnosis started coming in, I used to get a lot of kind of younger generation clients coming saying, I can't do this because I don't know, I've got ADHD, or I've got bipolar. I can't do this. I can't do that. And the thing is, with me, what I tend to do, I do hear them. I'm like, okay, you've told me the list of things you cannot do, but what can you do? And I find out that transition, especially with younger people, you really see them think and feel with that. And then they think, oh, actually, no, similar to what you had, the penny drop moment. I know I had mine, where you start questioning that. Curious mind comes out there, but you can really see that with your guests on your podcast. It's really amazing to see. That's why I was a little bit anxious of having you on. 'Cause, oh my God, look at how she is. She's got her experience, and it generally, you've generally made me feel comfortable with, being a guest, and it really has. And you've worked with kind of people who have kind of often labeled, if you like, addict, homeless, mentally ill, difficult, disabled as well. I mean, what would you say, because you're, like I said, you're your own expert here, especially with all your diagnosis which you've had. I mean, what do labels, would you say, kind of do to people, if you like, or do for them?
Yeah, so it definitely there's good and bad with both, right? So depending on, I would say, who is using the label and how they're using the label is going to depend more on the perception of it than what the actual label is, right? Because there's definitely people that went, "Oh, your kid's autistic," which is different than, "Oh, your kid's autistic," right? Like, so very
Mm,
different,
yeah,
because there's nothing wrong with that. And she owns it. She's like, "Cool, I'm autistic
good
and
on
I'm
her.
cool, whatever," right?
Love that.
And yes, it stops her from doing some things, but then she tries and discovers other things that she's good at. Um, and I mean, since we're talking about autism, it's so varied. Like, the things that I can do are so very different than even what she can do.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, it's so different. So there's that. And then even when people are like, "Oh, I've got depression." Yep, yep, you do. Right. And it doesn't necessarily, it's not good, it's not bad. It just is. And having the label has helped. I mean, I've talked about it, right? It's helped me go, "Oh, this is about me,
yeah,
and this makes sense of that," right? It's aha. So if you're using the label to get down to who you are as a person, to embrace who you are, all of your, for me, all my quirkiness and my
yeah,
fun, right?
yeah.
The living outside the box. Um, Labels are great. I love my labels. I own them and I like them because they've helped me. However, some people will be like, "Oh yeah, there's a crackhead." That is not a helpful label, right? It's just not. Um, if somebody is going and saying, "Yeah, I have addiction," and they're in an AA meeting, they're at a doctor, the label could help them. So I think the label itself is not as important as how that label is going to be used. Um, Obviously, I used crackhead as, it's more of a slur than a label, but people use it as a label. And that's a pretty big distinction too. Is, are you using a label or are you using a slur of a label? So yeah, I think what we need to do as a society, and this is what I try to do on my show, is, again, it's a fact. We have certain things, people have certain things. If they choose to say, like on my show, I let the guest lead very much like what you're doing. And if they choose to say, "I'm anorexic," cool. Then that's what I'll use because that's the term that you've used. I'm going to use what you're comfortable with. It's when we start putting our issues onto that person with what we determine is their label. That's when I think it starts becoming a problem because we're doing it through our perception of our past and our experience and going forward with it. So, yeah, labels are neither good nor bad, but they can be perceived either way dependent on how they're used.
Sure. Thanks for that. That's so much insight. I'd sit here for hours with you. I'm terrible, as you know, I'm a talker, and just getting into your mind and how
Me
you've
too.
done that. It's just amazing. And I mean, again, what do you kind of wish people would understood about autism? Again, when it comes here, especially where I work, trying to get a diagnosis for autism, even support for autism. Like I said, it's not my area, definitely not in my expertise, if you like. But I mean, there's so much kind of lack of support network, especially in where the areas I am in regards to autism with diagnosis and that side as well. It is really, really hard to be able to get the support for people there. So what do you wish people, would understand better about autism, from your own personal experience on that side?
So many things. I will narrow it down. Number 1, don't stare at people.
Sure.
Um, right? If we're doing something weird, like, sometimes I'll do some weird stuff in the store because 'cause I'm stimming. You don't gotta stare. It's fine. I'm fine. Also, just treat the person as a person is gonna be a really big one because autism varies so drastically from person to person. A lot of people look at me and they don't even know I have it, which cool. You don't need to know. It's none of your dang business. If I choose to tell you, cool, I've chosen to tell you. But like everybody is so different with it. So it's important just to treat the person as a person. And as you're interacting with them, you'll figure out what level of conversation they can hold or what kind of things that they want to talk about, just like any other person.
Sure, sure.
It's shocking that way.
Yes, yeah, I mean, there's so much insight, and I just kind of admire of what you're doing, and obviously you spend so much of your life being different. And what would you say to someone who believes that being different means something is wrong with them? If you like, you highlighted some of that earlier in our conversation.
I would say we're not gonna be friends.
Sure.
Right? Check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Yeah,
Um, so I mean, basically, yeah, that is what I would say is, yeah, you know what? It looks like we got some difference of opinions here, and we're not meant to be friends. Like, you can take your opinions and walk away.
sure. And then obviously this kind of expanded onto your podcast, and with all your interviews you've done, and you create like a platform where people kind of tell us always. For me, I'm kind of really glad I'm doing a similar side of yours with how you are, and what are those conversations kind of taught you about humanity? Because like just alone the stories from I'm hearing from you is really quite moving for me, and all my other guests I had. So what else kind of the conversations you've had with people kind of taught you about humanity, if you like?
My goodness, yeah. So I've been doing my show for 5 years, so I have a lot of interviews, a lot of insights. I'm just gonna
Yeah,
listen to it, ride or die show.
sure.
Um,
Yeah,
but really, I've so many interesting ones. One that's popping out. This person was raised in a cult. That was one of my favorite episodes because I was like, "Oh my gosh, tell me more. I need more." Right, and sharing their truths. It really, I am very open, yes, from lots of therapy and doing it, but when I interview other people and they're sharing all of their stuff and I'm like, "Yeah, I can do it. I can share my stuff too."
yeah,
Right? Like, even though I've already been doing it, sometimes, good days and bad days, sometimes my voices are like, "Nobody wants to hear that. Your story sucks."
sure.
And then I do an interview and I'm like, "Wow, yes, I can totally keep doing this. This is great." So, uh, there's too many things. Humanity is cruel at times, so very cruel. I've had, people on the show that have been assaulted in various ways, and it's shocking to me. Like, I'm very looking for the right word, very shocked. I can't find the right word right now, but and just how they've come through it. I'm like, oh my goodness. You're saying oh my goodness to my story. I've said oh my goodness to other people's story. I'm like, wow, like wow. And so, yeah, humanity can be cruel, but humanity can also be so beautiful. I've met so many amazing people. I'm still friends with some of them. We keep in touch, and I'm just like, wow, this is so cool. I would have met you before. So it's I've had, yeah, just such a crazy array of people on the show that it's hard to pinpoint any specifics.
I must admit that is just absolutely amazing, and I will definitely be keeping just how you are as a host. I mean, how you get are really moving stories, and I kind of want to give you space for this one because, like I say, I would speak to you for hours. I always say this to all my clients. I'd love to get all of us in a room and have one massive conversation, and I kind of imagine kind of someone listening now, if you like, they're struggling with depression. Maybe, they're autistic and spent years, feeling like something's wrong with them, maybe trauma and chronic pain. I mean, there's so many things you've been through. I'd be here all day, explaining to and or even that person saying, "I don't know." The big one is, "I don't know how much longer I can do this." They don't need. Let's be honest. I hear so much of it, and it just frustrates me sometimes. People who are in that position really don't need to hear another motivational quote, or they don't need somebody telling them to simply be stronger. And they need somebody who understands. So, what would Randy Lee say to them?
Well, first off, go get a dog. Dogs are great. Well, because a lot of times having somebody, whether it's a human or an animal, that relies on you gives you that one reason to stay. right? Because you really need one reason. So what is the one reason to stay? So you get a pet. And I say dog because what else a dog does is unconditional love. I love my cats. I have cats. They're great, but they're also a-holes,
They do, yeah.
right?
It's not if you
They just
feed them, they
are,
don't care. Yeah, my
right? They
partner's
just
got a
are.
cat, and she said my cats are arseholes. Totally agree.
Right. They just are. But a dog loves you no matter what. You are the dog's whole world. And then they also force you to get exercise because you have to
Hmm.
walk them.
Yeah,
And
perfect.
exercise in is of itself. And you have to walk them outside because they have to go to the bathroom. So now you're getting fresh air. So a
Yeah.
dog just kind of encompasses all of the different coping strategies that people spit out that you just get a dog. Um, but beyond the silliness of get a dog, which is, I mean, silly, but also true. Do it. Um, and adopt one. Don't get one from like a thing. Go adopt a rescue dog.
Yeah, but yeah.
Anyways, is reach out to somebody, and it doesn't have to be a friend, a family, like reach out to somebody you trust. If it is a friend or family, awesome that you have that. If it's not, cool. Not everybody has that. But reach out to somebody. And that is the hardest thing to do. It's way easier to get a dog. It is
Sure.
the hardest thing to do. It is the simplest statement to make, but it is the hardest thing to do because in that moment, you're admitting that something is wrong with you. And nobody wants to do that. But the thing is, something is wrong with you. Like, I'm not going to beat around the bush. Something's wrong with you. I've been there. I've 100% been there where I have been driving to work and I have to drive over about 3 bridges to get to my old job. My plan was to drive off one of them. The hardest thing to do was when my coworker finally went, "Come to my office. Come to my office," and sat me down and we had a heart to heart. The hardest thing to do was go, "Yeah, I'm broken. Like, I've hit my wall. Like, I can't. I can't." That was the hardest thing to do. It wasn't hard afterwards to then go to therapy. Yeah, okay, it's hard to go and talk about it and whatever. Like, I'm not saying it's easy, but the hardest thing to do was the very first thing of saying, "I need the help." It's ridiculously hard. And it's so cliche, but it's so true. But getting a dog's easier. And the
Yeah, it
dog will lead you to
does.
therapy.
Yeah, very, yeah, that's the way it's done. I mean, seriously, thank you, Randi-Lee. I mean, because your story gives us some much deeper than, a simple message of resilience here, if you like. It gives reality. I mean, depression, trauma, neurodiversity, a cancer, loss, identity, change, and yet you're still here, you're still creating, you're still speaking, helping people as well, and connecting, and still asking that important questions, if you like, and they're still giving people permission to tell their own stories, and I think that's so incredibly powerful. And as a therapist, one of the things I've learned is that people, aren't simply the things that happen to them. There are experiences which kind of influences, if you like, they shape us, and sometimes they wound us deeply, if you like, but they don't have to become our entire identity. And similar to yourself, I've worked across people who are experiencing addiction, homelessness, grief, anxiety, depression, even relationship breakdowns and loss. And one thing continues to stand out: people rarely need somebody to come along and tell them exactly how to live, but sometimes they need someone willing to sit beside them, without that judgment, and long enough to be, spit my words out, sorry, long enough for them to begin to start them to hear themselves. So, I mean, so getting out to the listeners out there, there's so much amazing work which you're doing. So how do people get hold of Randi-Lee? Because I will put all the information, I've got it all written out. It's all be there in the description. So if you do want to get hold of Randi-Lee, it'll be all in the socials. I'll make sure it's all up there. But you telling the people, how do people get hold of Randi-Lee if they want to reach out and start looking at the amazing work which you're doing? How do they get hold of you?
So my website is rbwriting.ca. I am in the process of updating the whole thing, but the old one is still up, so you can still see all the things.
Excellent.
But the new one's so pretty; it's gonna be great. Um, and then on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all those, just look up Randi-Lee Bowslaugh.
Mhm.
Actually, Facebook, I think I'm RB Writing, but everywhere else, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Randi-Lee Bowslaugh. That's how you can also
Excellent.
find the Write or Die Show. Just look up my name. There's only
Excellent.
one of me. It's great.
Brilliant. We
Um,
like that.
right. And we didn't touch on this, but I'm going to very quickly. I am going to be making a movie. So if you're interested in supporting, it's about my brother's death by drug overdose. Yep, that happened. It's a real thing. You can go on Kickstarter and find that.
I mean, sorry we didn't get to explore that. I know we in regards to
There's so
Robin,
much.
and I really would love you to come back on and possibly speak that. I kind of went to kind of recognizing who you was and how you evolved to who you are to this day. And
Yeah.
I so wanted to kind of get in regards to your brother side of things. And if you don't mind, I'd love you to come back on again. And that's one of my areas, experiencing grief at such a young age with people around me. And even now, I'm, with my family members, I'm the only one who's left. And grief, I really love working with people with grief. And it sounds really kind of morbid, but again, I would really love for you to come on the show again and some of your journey on that side, if you don't mind. I'd really love you
Yeah.
to come on and be able to explore that. And then, yeah, like I said, I'd sit here, it was all my guests, I'd sit here for hours on end, which I would. And but again, sincerely thank you for giving me your time and your story. And I know we've only touched part, I always do this with my guests, where we touch only part of their story, and I so would love to be able to give more, but I really, really would truly love to have you on again and explore some of that with you. And I've got you on YouTube. I will add you to all the socials. As I said, I've been so manic at work. I'm seeing all these things pop up and advertising, and I'm kind of, I've got to add them on the socials because the work you do is just so phenomenal, and you've been on such a journey and such an inspiring person yet again, who's kind of make me really kind of take 10 minutes after this session, really reflect how lucky I am to have people like yourself, and also reflecting on how much you went through at such a young age, and luckily, like you and I, were still standing, hence that's why I called this one Where It Was. And you truly are such an inspiring person, and I really would love to keep in touch with you with everything. So thank you so much for giving me your time and giving the message out, so hopefully the younger Randi-Lees out there, and hopefully a bit of thought for there. So thank you so much for your time, and I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sure. And if you've been listening today, and if something in this conversation has touched something inside you, please don't ignore it. You don't have to fix everything today. You don't need every answer. You don't even need to know exactly what you're feeling. And sometimes the first step is simply, I'm struggling. And we often think resilience means standing tall or never falling, never struggling, and never needing anybody, if you like. But perhaps resilience is admitting I can't do this today, and understanding that tomorrow might be different. Perhaps resilience is learning to live with the body you have, if you like. And I've always found nature to kind of teach myself, as I say, a tree doesn't rush, it doesn't compare to itself to the tree next to it, if you like, and it certainly doesn't apologize for the leaves it loses and seasons where we begin again, if you like. And you don't have to bloom every day. Never let too tired keep me down really means. So this is Garon Green from the Green Room podcast with the amazing Randi-Lee and her story. And if you'd like to reach out with Randi, there'll be all the information we've got on the socials for her. So, if you're struggling, please remember this. You don't have to see the whole path. You only have to see the next step. And sometimes, that next step is very small, and that is okay. So again, is there anything you'd like to add, Randi-Lee, before we close down the session for today? And is there anything you would like to say?
Yeah, find me on Kickstarter. No, I always end my podcast. I mean, you can if you want to, but I always end my podcast. And I think it's very fitting for what we've been talking about. Is the only way to end the stigma of mental health is to speak openly and honestly.
Can't be get any more plain straightforward than that, can you?
Yeah.
And like you say, you don't have to be okay every day to keep moving forward. And as we know, sometimes that being still standing is enough, and hence that's why I've named it what it is, because that's what you're doing. You're still standing. So thank you so much, hand on heart, for giving me all your time, and I'll definitely be in touch. I'll definitely be reading the books. I've got 2 of my guests so far. I've got two of their books now, and yours is going to be part of my collection, so I'm really, really keen to be able to read that. And hand on heart, thank you so much for your time and your journey, and most importantly, being part of the Green Room. This means a complete world to me, that people like yourself are open to come on as a guest, and I certainly will have you back. I'd love to have you back on the show to explore the other side, which we
Definitely
didn't
be back.
explore. Okay, and Randi-Lee, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it.